Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well out there. We are live and alive today, Thursday, the 8th of May. We have a lovely episode for you all today, talking about some Cube stuff because I love Cube and I love talking about it. So, today we're going to be talking about Flash in Cube. This is more than just a one-card thing. It's become a whole package, basically. And it's one of these things where it's really going to come to the fore the last couple of years or so, but it might have been something we should have been running for a while. So let's read Flash, and then we'll kind of go into what we're doing today. Ooh, spoilers. So, Flash is 1 and a blue. For an instant, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you do, sacrifice it unless you pay its mana cost reduced by 2. So, this is the card Flash. What is it good for? So, basically, the fair play of the fair way of playing Flash, which we're never actually really doing, is it gives a card like the ability. It gives a card the mechanic Flash, so you can cast it on your opponent's turn, and then you pay its mana cost reduced by this cost. You get to put it into play. That is not how you're ever using this card in Cube. What you're doing is you are putting a massive creature into play. You're getting value from it on the way in and on the way out. You're not paying its mana cost. The creature is going to die straight away. But the point is, for 2 mana, you get all that creature's worth of value. It's really good at cheating things in with big ETBs and big death triggers. We generally see Flash in higher powered cubes. Like this is a very strong archetype or like a package in like the Mitgo Vintage Cube. It's a strong package in my cube, which is an unpowered Vintage Cube. So it's similar power level, just no actual factual power. So still very strong. But the nice thing about Flash is that it's kind of like Reanimator in that it can go in lower powered cubes, but effectively you tailor what you're reanimating to suit the environment. Like in my lower powered cube, I'm not running Griselbrand or Griselbrand, Archon, or Atraxa because I kind of powered it down and took out some I took out the Minsc Boos. I took out the Fourth Aelinguses from my cube because they were kind of warping the format, and that kind of left Reanimator being too strong by itself. So basically, I was able to tailor the power level of that by changing the targets. The same is true with Flash. You could because it's banned everywhere, apart from legal in Oathbreaker, which seems like a mistake. If people still play Oathbreaker, consider Flash, may I just say. But you can see that it's 7 points in Canadian Highlander. This is probably the same, if not more, than a Black Lotus. This is how powerful this card is. You can see it's banned in Legacy, banned in Commander, quite rightly. And restricted in Vintage. This is a very, very good and very strong Magic card that we're talking about here. But while this is strong, again, rather than running some of the most premium cheat targets, you can run less efficient ones. We'll get onto those in a moment. So this really has become more popular as a decking cube in the last couple of years or so. As I mentioned, it's probably something we should have been running for longer, but realistically, there's always been kind of like some decent Flash and Flash targets. How Flash is often used in other formats, which is why it's banned in Commander, is because of like combo lines. There's in like Commander and Constructor formats, you can Flash in it's like Protean Hulk. This is not what we're doing in Cube, but I'll kind of give context for the card at least. Protean Hulk. So the gimmick with this is when this creature dies, you search your library for any number of cards with total mana value 6 or less and put them onto the battlefield and shuffle. So if you Flash in a Protean Hulk, this is why it was banned in Commander, because if Protean Hulk comes in and dies, you can just tutor up your combo on the spot and win. So that's why it's banned in a bunch of formats. In Cube, it's a bit harder to do that. I have never seen anyone register a Protean Hulk in a Cube deck, because with this, you need to draft the Flash, the Protean Hulk. You then need to draft your additional combo on top of that. It could be like a persist combo. There is stuff with lands. There's a bunch of different ways you can win once. Basically any kind of creature combo you can tutor up with Protean Hulk. Kiki Jiki might be a bit tricky because of the 6 mana, but there'll be combos you can tutor up with Protean Hulk. But in Cube, this doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because you've already drafted a combo and now you're adding a tutor and a card that doesn't work with your combo but only works with one card. Like Demonic Tutor exists in Cube. Like other like Creature Tutors is in Cube. We're not doing Protean Hulk. We are cheating in things to just get value. So the way that the Flash deck kind of works is we cast Flash as early as turn 2 and put in a massive creature with a big ETB and with a big dice trigger and get value from it straight away, and then we're in such a commanding board state we just kind of ride that to victory. One of the reasons why I think this has become more popular recently is because it's kind of like the Wheels deck, if I'm honest with you. Like, there was definitely already bits for it, but just like enough redundant good creatures have been printed in the last couple of years to actually make it kind of work in larger cubes. Like Flash could have definitely been in with some of the cards. Like, some of the cards we're going to be talking about are a little older, but the majority of them, of the really good ones, are newer. But why? One of the main reasons I wanted to talk about Flash today, and the Flash package, as it were, is because Flash has really warped the way that I and most cube designers that I've seen are thinking about their big cheat targets. We kind of went through this arc of like, oh, it's all Reanimator targets. Then Atraxa gets printed, and it's like, we want green targets so we can also natural order for them. Then it's kind of like, we also want artifacts so we can tinker for them. We're kind of in this world where kind of like they all need to kind of overlap with everything, if that makes sense. Like, the more things that can cheat them into play, the better. And Flash is one of the best, so now we are looking at threats that work with the Flash deck as well as all the other decks. Let's actually so Flash is the card that we're going to be kind of like thinking of. We'll talk about some overlaps and like in other archetypes and stuff in a bit, but like let's actually talk about some of the things that we're actually going to be cheating into play with it. This is in a sort of order, but I think one of the best things to be flashing in with this is Worldspine Worm. This is 11 mana for a creature worm. It's a 15/15 with trample, and when this creature dies, create 3 5/5 green worm creature tokens with trample, and when Worldspine Worm is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. So if you flash this in, so on turn 2, if you start with Worldspine Worm Flash in hand, on turn 2, or maybe even turn 1 if you're in a powered cube and you have some power or some turn 1 acceleration, you're going to end up, so you cast Flash, you put in Worldspine Worm, you shockingly don't pay the additional 9 mana, which means Worldspine Worm dies, but you get 3 5/5 green worms with trample. That's very good on turn 2. That's one of the things about this deck. That's as early, because Flash is so cheap, you can kick things off really, really quickly. So cheating in a Worldspine Worm, this is one of the best things you can do with Flash, because it just comes in, it's nice and neat. 3 5/5s will end games. It's multiple bodies, so even if they destroy one of them, you're like if they have a path in hand or they have a bit of removal, that's not going to stop the Worldspine Worm train. Like, they'll be dead by turn 4. That's very scary and it's very powerful. So I'm going to take the tea bag out of my tea. One sec. Dreadful. Alright. So for me, Worldspine Worm is top tier, and Worldspine Worm has been, like, Return to Ravnica, it's probably more years ago than I would like to think. When did it come out? 2012. So this is what I mean of kind of like, we could in theory have had Flash in Cube for a while, and some people would have done it, but it wasn't as popular as it has been recently. And also just the reprintings of Worldspine Worm means that this is actually pretty budget. This is very strong. Maybe Flash Worldspine Worm might be a bit too good for a budget cube, but it is something you could consider. If you're kind of trying to push power level but on a budget, then this could be pretty solid. The next order kind of gets a bit... The next one I like... Oh, sorry. The other thing with Worldspine Worm is that we do want cheat targets to overlap. If you are thinking of adding Worldspine Worm to your powered cube, you do need to look at instant speed ways of reanimating. So this is my regular cube. Let's see if I have any of these. I don't think I think I've actually cut a bunch of the instant speed. But Necromancy is an instant speed way of bringing stuff back. But the thing with Worldspine Worm to remember is that it doesn't work with Reanimate. It doesn't work with... Do I not have more reanimation spells? I might need to look at my cube at some point. It doesn't work with Animate Dead, for example. It doesn't work with Exhume because of it has the Eldrazi. If it goes to graveyard, shuffle it in. You need to do the instant speed reanimation spells if you're going to be pushing that in your cube. Just something to consider. But it's also Wellspine Worm is also a solid natural order target. It might not be as premium as like a Hoof in a Elf Ball deck, but it's a 15/15. It will still kill people. It's a 15 thing that if they answer, you still get something out. The next one I like quite highly in the Flash deck is Vaultborn Tyrant. This is 5 green for a creature dinosaur. It's a 6/6 with trample. And whenever this creature or another creature you control with power 4 or greater enters, you gain 3 life and draw a card. And when this creature dies, if it's not a token, create a tokenless copy of it, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So why this is great with Flash is because you flash this in as early as turn 2, again. If you are doing it later in the game, it's still good. You get a 6/6, you gain 6 life, and you draw 2 cards. Because the token is a copy of this, so it also has this ability. 2 mana for a 6/6 trample, gain 6 life, draw 2 cards. That is nuts. That is incredibly good. This was printed start of last year, and this is kind of this is where we're really starting to see the uptick of Flash get really strong because cards like Vaultborn Tyrant are being printed. I really like Vaultborn Tyrant. It's a really powerful card. This also just goes in. This, unlike Wellspine Worm, I think just goes in any high-powered level cube. I think should consider Vaultborn Tyrant because it is a reanimator target. It is a natural order target. If you're cheating things into play, it's great. Basically, it's the strong dies trigger is what we're after because like we're not down a creature. Like some of the ones we'll get to later are like in theory you could flash in like a strong ETB effect, but like realistically you still want something good left behind, and that's what this does. It leaves you with a 6/6 that can win you the game by itself. That's very solid. Next up is one from the Commander product, which a lot of people haven't seen, but it is incredibly budget, and this is again you can put. It is showing that Flash can go into more budget cubes if you think the power level can support it. It's Torsten, founder of Benalia. This is 5 green and a white for a legendary creature, human soldier. It is a 7/7. When it enters, it reveals the top 7 cards of your library. Put any number of creature and or land cards from among them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you're drawing a bunch of cards when it comes in, you get value straight away. And when it dies, you create 7/1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So you can kind of see the pattern here Wellspine Worm was just great because it's putting so much power on the bottom of the board. It's gonna win us the game by itself. But with with Vaultborn Tyrant and with Torsten, we are getting card advantage, and we are getting 7/1/1s as well. 7/1/1s I know are probably not as good as 3 5/5s with trample, but we're still getting something out of it. Like we are in the point now with this where it's like this is a good level of redundancy. Like Torsten in a Flash deck is great. It might not be as strong as Wellspine Worm or Vaultborn Tyrant, but it's still very, very good. You're probably also not. So Torsten does kind of thread the needle of it's not a card you want in other cheat decks because to be happy with Torsten, I think you want it to die. I think you'd rather have 7/1/1 tokens than 1/7/7 because it itself doesn't have evasion. Is the way I think about it. So Torsten is one more for the Flash archetype and more for archetypes or cheat effects where the things are dying straight away. Think your sneak attacks, think your Through the Breaches. We will get onto those in overlaps in a little bit. But Torsten, very solid in the Flash deck, and also it's a nice budget include. And it's an include you can run just for that Flash deck. But it is, while it's not the way I've generally been designing cubes is having my cheat targets work in as many decks as possible. So while Torsten is not as good as Griselbrand or Archon of Cruelty for your reanimation decks, it's still fine. It's fine in that deck, and that's kind of. I personally found it's okay to run less optimal bits for one deck if it allows other decks to exist, and that's kind of where we are with these packages. We're trying to make as much overlap as possible. It's like a nice little web. So Torsten, very solid Magic card. We're going more just on beef now with Triplicate Titan. This is a pretty solid Tinker target as well. It's not the most premium Tinker target, but it is pretty solid. This does work with Sneak Attack as well. But Triplicate Titan is a 9 generic mana for a 9/9. Artifact creature Golem with Flying, Vigilance, and Trample. When this dies, create a 3/3 colorless Golem artifact creature token with Flying. a 3/3 colorless Jet Golem artifact token with Vigilance, and a 3/3 colorless Golem artifact token with Trample. So you flash this in, you get 3 bodies, 1 with Trample, 1 with Vigilance, 1 with Flying. That's all pretty solid. We like all that. Yeah, this is just beef. This is not your most premium targets, but again, because it can be a reanimation target, because it can be a Tinker target, and because it is very good in Flash. That is where this gets in. I realized I was meant to be making a package of these to show everyone. So let's just quickly add all the cards that we've talked about before we move on. I was like, why is Mox Field open on the right? Because we're meant to be doing this. Right. Let's get Flash in here. So a link to this will be in the show notes below, as well as once we're done, we'll make a Cube Cobra package. Because in Cube Cobra, you can actually just click Add Package to your cube, and it will be there. So that's a nice little thing that we'll be doing for today. You basically, Flash is the important part of this package. The creatures you can tailor to the power level of your cube. We're kind of going down the tier order, so kind of, and also budget order. So find the one that works for you. Next up is Woodville Primus. Woodville Primus is kind of a very solid. It's always been a pretty solid cheat target. It came out in 1993. Is that? No, that can't be right. When did this come out? 2008. That makes more sense. Jesus. Yeah, I was going to say Woodville Primus, not in alpha. But yeah, so this came out in 2008. So this is an example of a card that we could have been playing with World Spineworm in the Flash deck many years ago. But Woodville Primus has always been kind of like a staple in cubes because of the ability to destroy target non-creature permanent. So it's 8 mana, trample. When it enters destroy target non-creature permanent, it's a 6/6 with persist. So if you cheat this into play, normally with something like a natural order or a sneak attack, it's going to come in and destroy target non-creature permanent. So that means you can nerf lands with it, and that's always been pretty good. There's also in higher powered level cubes, there's a bunch of stuff that's non-creatures that you want to answer. There's big engine pieces. There's like the house. By the house, I mean Bolas' Citadel, that kind of stuff. There's plenty of things that you want to answer with a Woodville Primus. Like, there's also, like, Gaia's Cradles. There's Tolarian Academies. Woodville Primus is great and is flexible at answering those kind of things. Why it's great in a Flash deck, and why it has seen play before, because it does overlap with Sneak Attack, is the Persist. This is kind of like prototype Vaultborn Tyrant. Woodville Primus walked so that Vaultborn Tyrant could run, basically, because it comes in, you get this strong ETB, you can nerf a land. So imagine doing this on turn 2. Just if your opponent's on the play, you're on the draw. On turn 2, you flash in a Woodville Primus. You destroy their 1 land. This creature persists. It comes back into play. You destroy their other land. On turn 2, you have 2 lands and a 5/5 trample, and your opponent has nothing. You're probably winning that game of Magic. And that is kind of like the most optimal version of this deck. It's like the strongest thing you can do with a Woodville Primus. But like, even later in the game, like, it doesn't have to be on turn 2. You can tutor up Flash. There are... Do I have it in my other cube? Yeah, like cards like Spellseeker. There are ways of tutoring up Flash. It is an instant. There's things like Spellseeker. There's Mystical Tutor. These are cards that you can run in this deck. And there's just the generic black ones like Demonic Tutor, that kind of stuff, or Vampiric Tutor. You can go and get the Flash, or you can go and get your... If you have the Flash, you can go get your cheat target, and you can do this quite early. Like, doing that on turn 4, you have 4 lands and a 5/5, and they have 2 lands and, like, some other on-curve creature. You're going to be ahead. It's very, very strong. We have another new one in Etali Primal Conqueror. This is 7 mana for a 7/7. Legendary creature Elder Dinosaur with Trample. When Etali enters, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among those non-land cards, exiled this way without paying their mana costs. So this, we're starting getting into the... I put it lower on the list because you're not guaranteed to be left any power and toughness afterwards. In theory, you flash this in, and you are getting 2 spells from both of your decks. Both yours and your opponent's decks. There is the upside, because in your deck, you're running Etali with other cheat targets. So you're running World Spineworm, Woodville Primus, that kind of stuff. So If you can manipulate the top of your deck in some way, like this with the Vampiric Tutor is very good, because you can stack the top of your library and get something better. If you can do that, or like Sensei's Top It, if you have control, or even like a Brainstorm, it will be better. But just going into it, just trying to do it without any kind of setup, in theory, there should be no bad cards in Cube. Like, this isn't like limited drafts from like 5 to 10 years ago where they put bad cards in packs. So the chances of you whiffing completely on this are not as high as they used to be. But like, there are some cards that don't work. So like, you could just hit a counterspell off of your opponent's deck. Ideally, you're flashing this in and getting like 2 creatures, which you're probably about like maybe I think you're 50%. I'm pulling numbers completely out of my ass here, but I think you're about 50% to hit at least 1 creature off of 2 decks, because the opponent's. Yeah, you are actually. Yeah, you're not. It says non-land, so you can't whiff completely. You will get something. So this is obviously better in the deck where you're already running a bunch of other big stuff, because you have the possibility of hitting a bunch of other big stuff. But because you're not guaranteed to, but because with this you don't get any. You're not guaranteed to get beef afterwards. Like with Torsten, with all of these, you are left a creature afterwards. You are left something afterwards. Etali, because it's letting you cast stuff afterwards, it does have it has very high upside. But this is almost in the Atraxa sort of realm. You'll notice we haven't talked about Atraxa yet. Let's talk about Atraxa now, actually. I think what did I do? That was the wrong button. Alright, Atraxa. Let's talk about Atraxa now. It's a 3 mana and Wooburg apart from red for a 7/7 legendary creature affection angel. Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. When it enters, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put cards from type among the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So I'm not going to add this to our Flash package list. The reason for that is, this is a good Atraxa, probably, if not the top reanimator target, the top 2 reanimator targets. Maybe that's a conversation me and James should have on our podcast at some point. But basically, Atraxa you don't want necessarily in a Flash deck in a vacuum. Atraxa and Flash is not great, because that turns your 2 cards into potentially drawing 3 or 4 cards. Cards like that already exist in the cubes that are playing Flash. This is not super good. The reason to run Atraxa in a Flash deck is if you also have a bunch of reanimation spells. If you're kind of double dipping on your cheat targets, then Atraxa gets better, because Atraxa is generally, you want it to be in play. If you're reanimating Atraxa or putting it into play, you want the 7/7 Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. The card draw on this is basically good at finding your next reanimation threat, or reanimation spell, which if you hit with this, awesome, but if you don't hit with that, then you still have the body in play. If you're in a Flash deck with Atraxa, and you don't hit the next reanimation spell or the next thing to cheat in and do, you're kind of a bit screwed, because you spent 2 cards, and you haven't got a board state. It's not the same as World 21. You're not actively winning the game by doing this. So Atraxa, and same with Archon of Cruelty, while I think these are phenomenal reanimation targets, I don't think they work that well for Flash. Because like Archon of Cruelty, 8 mana, 6/6, flying. When it enters or attacks, target opponent attacks a creature of their choice, discards a card, loses 3 life, you draw a card and gain 3 life. Do you want to spend 2 mana and 2 cards to get this ETB once? You don't really. Not with Flash. So Archon and Atraxa don't get into the Flash package, as it were, but they are still good in a cube with Flash, because you can combine them with things like reanimation effects. Like there is a world where Flash, kind of like Sneak Attack, is like a discard outlet. If you're using it for that method, then it can be quite strong. But it's not. Those reanimation targets are not ideally what you are running in this package. If you're just supporting Flash, if you're doing reanimation as well, then you can overlap it. But we'll get to that in a bit. So for me, Worldspine Worm, Voltborn Tyrant, Torsten. Actually, let's make this bigger so we actually kind of get the map so you can see him a bit more. So for me, Worldspine Worm I think is highest. Then I put Voltborn Tyrant, then Torsten, then Triplicate Titan, then Woodfall Primus. Maybe Woodfall Primus and Triplicate Titan could be swapped around, actually. And then Atali. These are my kind of top 6 Flash targets. And I think if you're trying to support Flash and other cheaty decks like this, I think my gut is you would need about 4 in a 360, 6 to 7 in a 540, and then like 8 of these in a larger cube and in like a 720 cube, and that's where you are more the Archon of Cruelty attracts. Those become your other bits. There are some lower powered level ones, which are still very good Magic cards that I think you can run if you're doing this more in a lower powered environment. Stuff like Wurmcoil Engine. 6 mana, 6/6, artifact creature, Friction Worm, Death Touch, Lifelink. When it dies, create a 3/3 colorless Friction Worm, artifact creature token with Death Touch, and a 3/3 colorless Friction Worm, artifact creature token with Lifelink. So this is just a fine card. Like, you can ramp to 6. Most cubes will get to a point where people are hard casting a Wurmcoil Engine, even in powered cube. But in more kind of budget and mid power level environments, things like modern cubes, things like legacy cubes, things like more budget environments, Wurmcoil Engine will always be a good card. It's not going to be the most broken card. Like this is not a Worldspine Worm. This is not a Vault-Born Tyrant. But like flashing this in is fine in less powered environments. So I think we should actually start tagging these. So let's just so I can actually just so I can actually move them about a bit so you can kind of differentiate them. Because I think Wurmcoil Engine is not a premium flash target, but it is a flash target. If you want to include flash because you think because one of the things with this is flash is very cool. That's one of the reasons I'm talking about it, is because I think flash is rad. Like being able to flash stuff in is very, very cool. Yeah, we see some suggestions in the chat. Yeah, Ashen Rider, another solid example of something for a lower power level cube. When this creature enters or dies, exile target permanent, while also being an 8 mana 5/5. This is a classic reanimation target, actually. I think I actually ran this in my Legacy Dredge deck for a while. Ashen Rider, very solid. So this is a great... So I think I actually have Ashen Rider in my cube, but that's because as I mentioned, I powered down the reanimation effects. So Ashen Rider is a great little crossover because this effect is really solid in a cube. Like turning Flash into a double Strip Mine. Pretty good. Pretty good. But, meow darling, hello. Cat's coming back. But, yeah. Perfectly solid budget option if you're looking to put something together. Also mentioned Protein Hulk. Yeah, we chatted about Protein Hulk at the start. Protein Hulk, just very tricky just because it's basically you're adding an additional level to your combo, generally speaking. So Protein Hulk not going to get in the list for this, but Ashen Rider, very solid as a more budget option. We didn't put Wurmcoil Engine in. Let's put in Wurmcoil Engine. Alright, some other solid ones that have some overlap are Trumpeting Carnosaur. This is like a worst Atali. 6 mana, 7/6, trample. That's fine stats. You can also cast it. So kind of when you're going for the lower power level ones, the fact that you can hard cast them is a nice backup because they're going to go in cube environments where you can actually hard cast them. Sorry, the cat's running around me and being very darling. At some point, I'm going to set up a cat cam in the ceiling just so you can see her doing laps of me as we're recording. But it has when this creature enters Discovers 5. That's basically Cascade, but as an ETB. So you don't need to cast it. Because a regular Cascade doesn't work with Flash because Cascade is a cast trigger. This does. This is an ETB. You get something back. And also has 2 in a red. Discard this card. It deals 3 damage to target creature or Planeswalker. So I really like Trumpeting Carnosaur. I think it's a very cool card. You can add it as it can be removal when you need to. It puts itself into the bin. So if you are doing reanimation, like this is a very solid card. If again for that overlap, like an Ashen Rider, if you are also supporting Reanimator, it will go in those decks as well because it can put itself in the bin, which I do really like in reanimation targets. But effectively, it's a 2 mana spell that can give you effectively you're combining Flash and Trumpeting Carnosaur into getting additional value. And why this and things like Wurmcoil Engine are nice is because in lower power level cubes you generally don't have as many tutors. In higher power level cubes, again, you have things like Spellseeker, which we went over earlier. You have cards that can that make things like flash more consistent. The more how like there's better card draw in higher power level cubes. There's more filtering. You're going to be able to find your combo bits easier. In less power level cubes, that's not going to be the case. So you might have flash in your deck. That doesn't mean you're going to see it. That's where in lower power environments having your flash targets be things you can hard cast. Because like Llanowar Elving into Wormcoil Engine in a more budget environment is still going to be solid. So that's where things like Trumpeting Carnosaur and Wormcoil Engine come in. There's a couple of other ones that I like and I think are worth mentioning. The next one is Gruff Triplets. This is like a wee Worldspine Worm. It's 3 green for a 3/3 creature Satyr Warrior with Trample. When it enters, if there isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. And when it dies, put a number of +1 counters on it equal to the number of creatures you control named Gruff Triplets. So, basically when this dies, this is another Wormcoil Engine, basically. When this dies, you get 2 3/3s. Hold on, does that work? I always forget the math on this, but... Sorry, yes. So, when you... Yeah, too early for the math of this. So, when this comes in, if it isn't a token, you create 2 copies of it. So this is 6 mana for 9/9 worth of stats, I think. Again, it's early. I haven't really done the math of it. But when the creature enters, if it isn't a token, you create 2 copies of it. Yes. So, you make... The gimmick with this is you make a 9/9, then when they die, you make 2 6/6s, and then you make a 9/9. I think they kind of like come together. I think that's how that works. But basically, this is solid because you are Flash. With this, Flash is giving you bodies into play straight away, and it's also giving you more bodies when they die. So this is like a mini Worldspine Worm. Gruff Triplets I have found to be very solid if you're doing a more grindy Reanimator as kind of like an overlap. So this with... Recurring Nightmare is disgusting, and in more budget environments, Ctholian Nightmare, this can't be that expensive. Yeah, like the energy version. If you can get this engine going with this, Gruff Triplets is very, very strong, and is a nice little budget option. I've generally been impressed by Gruff Triplets. I think it's a solid bit of beef. But kind of like, yeah, so we have... Move this over. We have a kind of like our premium... flash targets here, and we have our lower powered flash targets here. But you notice most of these, apart from Ashen Rider, are very easy to cast. These are cards that some decks can just hard cast them. So like because in lesser powered cubes, things like mid range exists more than in higher powered level cubes. It's just pretty solid. All right, let's tag these as low, or we'll call them low, but it's effectively it's budget. It's ones that are looking to run Flash but aren't pushing the power level. That's where these come in. I want to tag these out because we have some overlap, which I want to talk about. I probably won't add them to the package, but why Flash is really cool and why Flash has kind of warped the way that we look at cubes is because of its overlap with other archetypes and with other cheat effects. So, there are other cheat effects, and we'll kind of go through the order in how they work best with Flash. I personally think the cards that work best with Flash is Sneak Attack. 3 in a red, enchantment. Single red, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So why this is good with... or why I like this, and I think it's comparable to Flash, is because the end result is the same. It's just the creature's in play a little bit longer. Sneak Attack is really good with creatures with strong ETBs and strong dice triggers, because you are sacrificing it at the beginning of the next end step. Like, the original way Sneak Attack was strong was you Sneak Attack in Emrakul and you win with 1 swing. Or you Sneak Attack with Grizzlebrand and you swing... deal a bunch of damage, then you draw a bunch of cards, or you even draw a bunch of cards straight away, find the next thing to Sneak Attack in, and then you just kind of rumble them that way. But, like, Sneak Attack is comparable to Flash, because it's kind of like I kind of joked that Flash is effectively a discard outlet. Sneak Attack is also kind of a discard outlet. It's just going through play to get to the graveyard. The Sneak Attack works with all of these threats. All of these threats come in. Basically, everything I said about these threats with Flash, that is true with sneak attack. But the bonus is you get to attack with them first. So just sneak attack in a Worldspine Worm could be fine if your opponent has like fetched and shocked themselves. Like any of these threats are good with sneak attack. So if you have sneak attack in your cube, or if you see it, it's a nice little overlap piece. Similarly to sneak attack, you have the one-time version of it in Through the Breach. Again, this is kind of in cubes often for sneak attacking in that big Emrakul, but having these be backups is nice. If you Through the Breach, Through the Breach is definitely a worse version of Flash. Like you get just 5 mana is a lot more than 2, but if you get a swing in with them as well as all this value, then it becomes a very powerful combination. I think it's pretty solid. I would, if you have a cube that's running Flash, I would consider Through the Breach and I would consider sneak attack. In these decks as well, you can build them to really work with Oath of Druids. You can really build them to be like card draw, interaction, tutors, flash, and top end. You don't need mana dorks, especially in high powered level cubes where there's more premium artifact ramp, like Moxen or Black Lotus, that kind of stuff. If it's a cube that doesn't have to rely as much on mana dorks for green to do its ramping, then it can be quite strong. But Oath of Druids is a very broken card. One of a cycle, the rest of the cycle is rubbish, but Oath of Druids slaps. It is 1 and a green for an enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may choose target player who controls more creatures than they do, and is their opponent. The first player may reveal cards on the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. If the first player does, that player puts this card onto the battlefield, and all the other cards are revealed this way into their library, or into their graveyard. So why this is good is because you're playing it in a deck that only has your top end. You're not running dorky creatures, so your opponent, like in games 2 and 3, your opponent can kind of work around this and not play the creatures. But just in it's natural for your opponent to play creatures. It is a game of Magic. It is how you advance the board state. It is how you win most games of Magic, is by turning a lad sideways. You play Oath of Druids is a great little backup to your Flash, or it's a great accompaniment to your Flash, because it's just a way of cheating things into play. If you get Oath of Druids, you're just going to be ripping through your deck and putting one of these big things into play. It's also 2 mana, so you can do it nice and early, but effectively, Oath is also a very strong way of having another Flash effect. And also, it is nice and budget, and it's like Flash. It is dependent on the targets you're putting in. Like, we have the more lower power level versions over here. Like, Oath of Druids and Flash in a more budget environment with these chaps, with Ashen Rider, Gruff Trip, Trumpet Cancer, and Wimp, that sounds like a pretty cool deck. It doesn't sound like the most broken thing. It's not going to take away with the table, because you're adjusting the power level to fit your cube, but you can still have these cool engine pieces, but it's just what you're cheating in you can tailor, and I think that's pretty solid and pretty nice. So Oath of Druids is a great overlap. Another classic overlap cheat into play stuff is something like Show and Tell. Now, in the highest power level cubes, people really shit on Show and Tell. People really don't like Show and Tell in like Vintage Cube, and I would agree that in the higher power level cubes, where other players are also going to be cheating big things into play, this can really go wrong. Especially as cards like Archon of Cruelty can mean it so your opponent can sack their thing. And also, your opponent, because this is a sorcery, your opponent will get to attack and get their effect first. That is not great. Basically, I run Show and Tell in my unpowered Vintage Cube, and I think it's actually good there. So it is literally just the premium cubes, like Moto Vintage Cube, no Show and Tell. Every other cube, I think people should run Show and Tell. I think it's really fun. It leads to very cool and interesting games. Yes, you can cheese people sometimes, but it's Show and Tell. It's 3 mana, people can interact with it, they can run counter spells, they can remove the threat. And it's both players, it's symmetrical, both like you can cycle something in, but effectively it's a cheap way of cheating something big into play. This is good when you know you have the biggest things in the cube. Like, why Show and Tell I think is good in low power level cubes. So in Vintage Cube, because there's the threat, and also with Modo Online, because you're not drafting within your pod, if that makes sense, Show and Tell is better in person, because you know a large portion of the large cards that were opened, like the big beefy creatures that were opened, and you've probably taken a bunch of them. That's important. Show and tell is much better in in-person drafts or where you're drafting within the pod. In the wild on MitGo, or I'm assuming Show and Tell isn't on. I'm assuming it's not on Arena, but I cannot confirm or deny that. It's in Brawl, so maybe. But basically, Show and Tell is. When would it have been printed on Arena? It might have been. I don't know, but basically, yeah. In person, I think Show and Tell great card, and it is comparable to Flash. It is 3 mana to put one of these big things into play. That's really, really good. The next one we want to talk about as an overlap card is Natural Order. And what I'm trying to get across is that all of these classic cheat effects work with the payoffs that we're going for. Natural Order is niche because it doesn't work with Atali and it doesn't work with Triplicate Titan. But it does work with Torsten, Vaultborn Tyrant, Woodfall Primus, Worldspine Worm. On top of Craterhoof Behemoth, for example. The classic went on, or even like a Prime Time, if you're doing something else with it, can be pretty solid. But Natural Order also fantastic because this also does go and get your Atraxa. It was Atraxa being printed that made me realise I do want a threat that can overlap with as many decks as possible. So now on big cheat targets, one of my considerations is it green? Natural Order also overlaps. This does require them to have a dorky green creature, so it does go better in more green decks. So this is why you see it in more classic Elf Ball decks, because they want elves to ramp into the hoof. It's all very, very good. But Natural Order in these kind of decks, so this doesn't tend to overlap with the Oath of Druids type of builds with Flash, but it does kind of overlap in the are you just a green X deck that's looking to cheat things into play? Because like in higher power level cubes, you will still run Mana Dorks. Like, Oath of Druids is a cool build around you are committing to. Natural Order kind of slots in a bit more easily. And then, obviously, we have the classic reanimation stuff. I'm only going to show reanimate. I'm not going to go through, like, Corpse Dance and Chthonian Nightmare and all the other ones. We'll put this under the package of reanimation. Reanimate is obviously a very strong overlap with a bunch of these cards. Effectively, you are just adding these as your reanimation targets as well. So, in higher power level cubes, you will still have Atraxa, you'll still have Archon of Cruelty, but having these in the cube as well, like, these big threats are still things that the reanimate player should consider. Like, again, Worldspine Worm, you need to be a bit more specific. Like, you need instant speed reanimation spells, because this does go to the graveyard. You can respond to it with a card like Corpse Dance. But Reanimate doesn't work with Worldspine Worm, but it does work with everything else. And while, yes, this is not Atraxa, while, yes, Triplicate Titan is not Archon of Cruelty, the reanimation players should still probably be taking them. And if they don't get there, then they still have a game plan. And that's kind of where... That's kind of the point of talking about Flash today, is like, Flash is a piece in the cog. Flash combines with all these other cheat decks very, very well, but it is a unique deck by itself. But it existing in Cube has changed the way that... has meant we are now looking for... Effectively, we are looking for cheat effects that work with Flash. It's kind of a weird thing of like... Flash becoming more popular in Cube has meant that we are warping our cheat targets around Flash. Because, as I've mentioned, all of these cheat targets work with everything else that we've gone over. Reanimate, Natural Order, Show and Tell, Oath of Druids, Through the Breach, Sneak Attack. These cards all work great with these cards as well. Like, that's where this kind of archetype is, and that's kind of what we are kind of looking at. I think what I'll do now is show some examples. I probably should have... Josh and James, this is one where I'm going to be asking for apologies rather than permission, because I forgot to message people last night. We have a very active and healthy Discord group where there's a bunch of very solid gamers in there who trophy a lot of cubes. I've got some examples of decks that have been trophied that have Flash in them. So I'm going to go through them. Now I'm going to give you an example of what these might look like. So let's bring this over. So... This is this is all going to be from the Mitgo Vintage Cube, for example, but these are decks that all have flash in them. But what you'll see is they often have overlap. So the targets for this are Vault-Born Tyrant, which I think is one of the best flash effects. But it also has Atraxa. But what it's doing is it also has other ways of cheating it into play. It has Exhume, it has Oath of Druids. So it has two other ways of cheating things into play. It's just chosen the top end to be Vault-Born Tyrant or Atraxa. You can see we also have things like Vampiric Tutor down here as a way of tutoring up bits. So this is both a control deck. It has a bunch of removal. It has some hand attack. It has some permission. It has some card selection. It has some big ways of interacting with your opponents. And then it has a way of either cheating games in very early or late game, exhuming one of these. So why this deck, it looks very strong. Obviously the power is very nice as well. And the mana base, like, honestly, like James and Josh are both, and everyone, I'm very fortunate to play Magic with a bunch of very, very good Magic players. I often kind of forget that I'm not bad at Magic just because I'm playing with a very high like their power level is over 9,000, etc., etc. But yeah, this looks like a phenomenal deck. I'm not surprised it 3-0'd because, again, you have all the bits that make a good deck work. And then you have the ability to flash and cheating one of these things into play, or exhume it later in the game. You can control the game, and then you can kind of take over the game later on. Let's look at another example. This is another cool one. So this is one that's kind of... It's a blue-white control deck, splashing a 4th Aelingus, obviously, because you splash 4th Aelingus in this in all formats. But you can kind of see that, yeah, it's a control deck. You kind of have Planeswalkers, you have extra turn spells, you have draw 7s, you have some permission, or like... You have the wheel combo in this deck. You have Narset with Time Twister in here, but you also have Time Walk, Time Walk, and Time Warp. So this is a double power deck with Snapcaster. So really, really broken. But it also has a Flash package, and this is it. So Flash is often not a deck; it is a package. That's why I retitled this Package before we went live, rather than Archetype, because it is a selection of cards that you're adding to make a cube work. You're adding like flash and some creatures. You're adding these things to make it work. Whereas it's not like what Azorius is doing in a cube. It is a package of very strong cards you can add to a deck. So this is a very, very strong control deck. But they've added Flash, Vault-Born Tyrant, Woodfall Primus as its way of winning the game. This is kind of what you're looking at in high power level cubes. Let's keep going. We have a bunch of examples and they're all very, very cool. So, this has two that we haven't actually talked about. We have Channel. Green, and until end turn you may act, you can pay life rather than pay mana. And Eureka, which is another show and tell. But the top end is we have Vault-Born Tyrant, Archon of Cruelty, Woodfall Primus, Worldspine Worm, and Emrakul. So the Channel is primarily here for the Emrakul. There's a nice way of cheesing that out because it only does colorless mana. But we also see we have Flash in here we have Flash and we have a life death. So the death is effectively one more for reanimate. So we have two other ways of cheating things into play. Actually, we have four other ways. Sorry, we have Flash, we have Channel, we have Death, we have Eureka, and we have Natural Order. And Through the Breach. Jesus. Okay. So this is a very all-in deck. I would consider this to be a full cheat deck. You can see it's multiple colours. Mana base is perfect. Or pretty solid. Is there a fetch land? There looks to be... There is a fetch land. Cool. We love that. So this is a great example of what one of these decks would look like. The others have been more kind of like... This is a control deck with a... these two have been more control decks with a flash cheat win con. This looks to be an all-in cheat deck. With this, because you just have so many targets... actually, Green Sun Zenith, I guess, can be used as a channel target as well, just to dump mana into it and get your Emrakul or your Worldspine Worm out. So this is what an all-in version looks like. You are really going ham with this. You have some of the best top ends. You have Emrakul, which is probably the best. I mean, if you want to kill your opponent, cheat in an Emrakul, but Archon is probably second or third. For reanimation targets, it's probably 1 or 2. Hello, Small Cat. Good to see you again. But this is a great example of a very all-in version of the deck. We have a couple more. We have 5 minutes. Let's keep going. So, this one... Ooh, there's a Hogak in this one. I love that. So, This is another great Green X cheat deck. You do often see the cheat decks be green adjacent because they will be able to hardcast them as well. But we have a flash down here. We have a natural order as our ways of cheating in these big dumb things. And this is what I'm trying to get across. You don't run flash in a vacuum. You team it up with other effects, and like you still have like the bottom end of this deck just looks great in any deck. So to take out flash from this, but consider Preordained, Birds of Paradise, Soul Ring, Mana Leak, Malevolent Rumble, Once Upon a Time, Satyr Wayfinder, Twitching Doll, and Renin 6. That is just a great bottom end for any high-powered cube deck. The fact that we then add flash and we add... Oh god, there's a Nadu in here. I didn't see that. Oh my god. Does that go infinite with anything? Probably. But yeah, just the fact that you have flash... Oh, actually, I think Nadu might go infinite with Nissa Who Shakes the World, but that's a thing for later. Or something goes infinite with Nissa Who Shakes the World. But flash with our top end means that we have the ability to have some very powerful turns. Why I like Reanimator and like cheat effects in these decks is because it means you can take a very cool deck and you can just win games out of nowhere, or it's a different axis to build towards. Like you can just be playing this pretty fair, pretty kind of mid-rangey deck, and then out of nowhere natural order, out of nowhere flash, Woodfall Primus, Vaultborn Tyrant take over the game. I need to ask them how Hogak went in this deck. I hope it went great. I'm assuming Hogak with Gristan Nadu. Ooh, I love that. All right, couple more talk about. So this looks to be a pretty solid flash deck. I mean, we have some power outliers. We have a Minskin Boo here, because obviously. But this is a flash deck with Vaultborn Tyrant, Torsten, and Woodfall Primus in the top end. But apart from that, it looks just like a pretty solid... It's a pretty good deck. Like again, all these decks went 3-0 in the Vintage Cubes. Something to consider. All of these decks trophied. That's why I'm showing them, because they're all very, very good. But like, you have your regular interaction down the bottom. You have just good cards. You have Brazen Borrow, Bonecrusher Giant as interaction. You have Broadside Bombardiers and Minskin Boo, which can take away which can own games by themselves. Them just throwing hamsters or talismans at people wins games of Magic. Oh, you even have Jace Rin's Prodigy to double flash. That's pretty hot. But a late game, because the backside of JVP lets you cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard again. That's pretty hot. But like combining that with the top end, again, it is taking a good deck and it's adding that little bit of spice. It's giving a deck another axis to work around. I think that's really cool. All right, we have one more before we finish up for today, and this looks to be. This is another. So again. We've had a couple that are decks, or like control decks, or like mid-rangey decks with a sprinkling. This looks to be an all-in cheat deck, because they've gone. We have Entomb, Reanimate, Shallow Grave, Flash, Sneak Attack through the Breach. We're also running discard outlets for our Reanimator stuff. So we have Liliana the Veil, can be a discard outlet. We have Careful Study, obviously Entomb. We have Imperial Seal as a tutor. Along with our cheat targets of Grave Titan, Vaultborn Tyrant, Woodfall Primus, and Emrakul. So I'm not surprised that... So this deck, again, it is attacking on multiple angles. Like, yes, it is a Flash deck, but like Flash works with all of these targets. While it's not as great with Grave Titan, if you need blockers, you will still put it in. Like, 2 mana, 2 cards for 2 2/2s isn't hot, but like Grave Titan... Probably in the more budget, like it could be in the budget options here. I didn't want to. It's adjacent. It's not the most thing you want to be. It's not the best thing you want to be doing, but it is a thing you can do. So yeah, this looks like another great deck. The fact you can through the Breach or Sneak Attack your Emrakul, and also Shallow Grave it. Shallow Grave is another instant speed one, like Corpse Dance. Put the top creature card from your graveyard onto play as though it would just play. The creature is unaffected by something. So. This is an instant speed one, but it's also... Jesus, that is expensive. Okay, proxy this one, squad. Yeah, this works with Emrakul and works with Worldspine Worm. But yeah, another great deck. And again, the person who drafted this has still taken their lands. They've still taken their interaction, their card draw, but they've had this as their way of winning. And that's what I think is one of the best things about Flash. It's a cool package that you can really... It's why I like packages in Cube in general, and it's why I like this one, is because... How many different colours did we see here? Like WUBRG is fully promoted in these 6 examples. And to be fair, I didn't have to, these are all from the last 4 months. These are all winning, these are all 3-0 decks people have done with Flash as a way of winning their games in them. And that's kind of why it's very cool and why I want to talk about it today. I will put, these decks were made by James and Josh. James, I host the Powerful Nothing Cube podcast. If you like Cube and you've watched and you made it this far in the video, please consider checking out our Cube podcast, Powerful Nothing. It's on the channel. Go to the main page and you'll see links to it. We talk about Cube every 2 weeks. A lot of fun. And Josh is also known as Fire Truck Modo. I'll put a link down to his page below. He does... there's a high chance he might have been actually drafted some of these on stream. He does record some of his gameplay. He also is a powerful vintage gamer. So if you like Bazaars of Baghdad being tapped, check out Fire Truck Modo. I will put a link to his channel in the show notes below as well. That's going to do it for today. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope people like these Cube videos. I really like talking about Cube. As I mentioned, I have a Cube podcast. I'm going to try at least once a week to talk about Cube. Yeah, Cube is great. Cube is life. I haven't got an outro. But anyway, alright, that's going to do it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until tomorrow, where we'll be back, we'll see you all then. You all take care. Goodbye.